نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فإن خير الكلام كلام الله، وأحسن هدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، شر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. We continue in the chapter of Istighatha on Sunday, September the 9th, 7:02 p.m., which agrees with on the Gregorian calendar, 2018, the year of 2018, which is in direct correlation or coincides with the Hijri calendar, Dhul Hijjah, which is now, walillahi alhamd, the 28th day of the Hijjah, as we wind down from this blessed month of what took place on the tremendous worship of our religion. After the year 1439 after the Hijrah of Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam. We continue in the chapter of clarifying how Istighatha is only for Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, and it is a type of worship in which you'll find of a lot of the Muslims in different countries have took this type of worship and directed it to other than Allah, or gave this right that is exclusively for Allah to other than Him. And we said in last class that Istighatha is a type of dua. That Istighatha is a type of supplication. And basically Istighatha is what everyone is dua al-makroob or dua al-muttar. The invocation of one who's facing severe stress or adversity or very difficult, trying times that are weighing heavy down upon him. Or it could be something of a life-threatening situation, and a person raises his hands to Allah to take him out of that endeavor or take him out of the situation that is either life-threatening or something that is something very heavy or trying or something stressful or trivial taking place in his life. I want to say trivial stuff in Allah, but something that is of adversity, very stressful. And when one raises his hands in dua while he's in that state of sadness or grief, turning to Allah, then that is istighatha, seeking relief and seeking help from Allah Ta'ala from a difficult situation what he's in. As I spoke to the brothers about how istighatha is directed to certain people, of what the Mashaykh al-Turuq or the Mashaykh of Sufiya are upon these days, we will find that they direct their worship to a person called Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. The people, like we said, of what they do, of certain traditions that are contrary, but rather it's in opposition to what Islam calls to what is correct, as far as one purifying their worship only for Allah, but instead of doing that, they direct it to someone either righteous or wretched. From those who were righteous was Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. Was someone who was wretched was someone named Ahmed ibn Ali al-Badawi. As you'll find, it is a famous grave in Egypt. which is in an area called Tanta. I think it's in an area called Tanta in Egypt. They have a Tanta in Egypt, or area in Egypt called Tanta, excuse me. And Ahmad al-Badawi is a grave you'll find that the people raise their hands dua. They raise in supplication asking him for madad, for assistance or relief. And they also direct the affair of istighatha to him. We said that these people, especially those who are making or directing their worship to other than Allah, or performing istighatha, when they direct this worship to this individual, who is Ahmad ibn Ali al-Badawi, or they call him a Sayyid al-Badawi. For number one, as we know, the Shia in their long history is filled with makr and khubth, betrayal, mistrust, and proven to be perfidious and treacherous all throughout the time where they manifested, all the way up to these days. You'll find their treachery has been to Islam and its people over the centuries, and over the long period of times. And you'll find, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, from those times, it's especially during the manifestation of, or the advent of Abdullah ibn Saba al-Yahudi. For number one, Ahmad ibn Ali, or they call him a Sayyid al-Badawi, like we said, is a famous grave in Egypt. It's very famous. And you'll find that the people are what? Making tawaf around the grave. They're raising dua. And you'll see women doing very strange things with their bodies, rubbing up against the dirt, certain parts of their bodies, certain parts of their awrah. All of this in order to what? Seek relief from some type of endeavor or some type of sadness or grief they're facing. Number one, like we said, who is Ahmad ibn Ali al-Badawi? Who is he? A Sayyid al-Badawi. Who is he? Number one, before I enter and talk about who he is, I want to keep in mind and let everyone know the definition of the meaning of al-Rafida, al-Shi'a, al-Batiniyah. As we know, the Shia claim that they are who followers of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Right, everyone? A Sayyid al-Badawi, he was a Shi'i. He was a Rafidi. He was Shi'i, Rafidi, Fatimi, Abidi, Batini, which I'm going to get into it, inshallah. But anyway, just the number one, start off, who is the Rafida? Who is the Shia, and what is the name of the Batiniyah? What does the being Batini mean? For number one, a Shia al-Batiniyah, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, is a deviant sect who deviated in the fundamentals of the religion. They deviated fundamentally. They're a deviant sect who deviated fundamentally, in which they openly profess Islam, but however, all of it is out of treachery and plotting against Islam. On the inside, what's their true reality of their plots. And they're well engrossed, rather they're extreme in certain teachings. What do we mean extreme in certain teachings? Such as them deitizing Ali ibn Abi Talib. That's an extreme belief. Isn't it not, everyone? Deitizing anyone, anything of the creation. Deitizing Ali, making him a deity of worship. And also likewise deitizing their so-called 12 imams, the Ithna Ashariyah. As we know, that's from their beliefs. So right there is a point to show that suffices as what, everyone? A religion that is absolutely incorrect. It shows the severe wickedness of what they're upon. To the point where during the time of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh, when the people deitized him, due to Ali's severe jealousy for Islam, and not jealousy for Tawheed, his jealousy for Tawheed, for monotheism and the worship of Allah, we know that Ali ibn Abi Talib gave them 3 days to repent. Because this started off in his time, during his time. The actual ideology and belief system of the Shia started during his time. And the person who actually started this ideology out of plotting against the people of Islam were Abdullah ibn Saba, who was a Jew. So by his tricks and his plots, Abdullah ibn Saba was able to convince people to the point where they deitized Ali, raised him above his level. Abdullah ibn Saba is the founder of the Shia. So the founder of the Shia, ya ma'ash al-ikhwa, is a Jew. The founder of the Shia was a Jew. So the first founder and establisher, or founder, of the Shia was a Jew whose name was Abdullah ibn Saba. He was a Jew who was from Yemen. So Abdullah ibn Saba first started the group or the sect called the Shia. And to let you know how wicked they were, like we mentioned a couple of minutes ago, what did we say, everyone? They deitized Ali. And Ali, due to his severe ghira, his jealousy for Tawheed, he gave them 3 days to repent. He says, I'm not a deity. And if you do not leave this off, I'll give you 3 days to repent. What did Ali ibn Abi Talib do? He burnt them with fire, set them on fire. Even though some of the Sahaba criticized him for this act of what he did, because there's a poetry where Ali ibn Abi Talib mentioned and said, فَلَمَّا رَأَيْتُ الْأَنْكَرَ مُنْكَرًا أَجَّجْتُ نَارِي وَأَنَادَيْتُ قُنْبُرًا, as it says in the poetry. He said, فَلَمَّا رَأَيْتُ الْأَمْرَ أَمْرًا مُنْكَرًا أَجَّجْتُ نَارِي وَأَنَادَيْتُ قُنْبُرًا. That is in the poetry. He says, when I seen a severe evil, he says, I called for fire, or I lit a fire, and I also lit that amber. Just a point to show how Ali ibn Abi Talib was highly against those who were deitizing him. He clearly rejected this notion and rejected this belief to deitize him. You'll find that these people who are upon the Rawafid, for the Shia, and they're all the same basically, Rawafid, Shia, all of them. When they tried to deitize Ali ibn Abi Talib, and likewise, of course, and his progeny, from them who are what? Who, everyone? Al-Hasan, Al-Hussein, right, everyone? And who are from the children of who, everyone? Fatima. Are from the children of who? Fatima, radiallahu anha. As you know, we know that they hide behind their love of Ahl-al-Bayt, as we know. That is their one, the main deviance, even though they have other ones. That's just to sum everything and make it concise, because we're trying to take advantage of the other time for other things. But that's just to sum up and make a concise point in which to establish the wickedness of the Shia and the Rawafid, of deitizing Ali ibn Abi Talib and so-called love of Ahl-al-Bayt, to the meaning of Ali and Fatima and their offspring, who was Hassan al-Hussein. طيب. When the ideology of what they call Batini, as Batini is the ideology of believing that the text has an apparent meaning and it has a hidden meaning. The word Batini, or Batin, means something inward. As you'll find that the Batin, or the people who's upon Batiniya or Batini, meaning that there's an open apparent meaning to the text of the Kitaab As-Sunnah, whereas that's only for the common folk, and then there's hidden meanings that's only for special people. There's hidden meanings that's only for special people who possess knowledge, as they think, or as they say. That's the meaning of Batini. Batini. Batiniyun. Batini. Or ya nisba. The ya has the end of it. Batiniyun. Batini. Batin, the origin of the meaning linguistically, is something hidden inwardly. طيب. So now you'll find there was a group or a sect that manifests. I'm just giving a little bit of definitions before I want to speak about what I want to talk about. Now the ideologies of Batini, of the Batini way of thinking, manifested during the time of the Khilafah of Uthman ibn Affan. Why, everyone? When the same person, Abdullah ibn Saba al-Yahudi, the Jew, who's the founder of the Shia. When he came, we said he was a Jew. And also, likewise, we know Abdullah ibn Saba, his name was Ibn Sauda, the son of a black woman. Ibn Sauda. And he claimed love for the family, or the house of the family of the Prophet ﷺ, which is Ali and Fatima, Hassan and Hussein, to the end of it. So when this madhab, just to sum up everything, the Shia, the madhab of Shi'i, al-Batini, if you could call it, we want to call it the Rafidi, they tried to establish a country, or land, or government. They called it Ad-Dawlat al-Fatimiyya, Ad-Dawlat al-Fatimiyya, which was a scripture to who? Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, in their claim. People had to realize that all of this was just a plan, as a plot for something behind it. That's all it was. All of this about Ali and loving Fatima, it's a smokescreen for what's something that's lurking behind it. Is it clear what I'm saying so far? That's what I'm going to elaborate on in a minute. You'll find that the Dawlat al-Fatimiyya, who is the Shia, who's the Rafid, the Shi'i, Batini, he says that they went against the Khilafah. The Khilafah, as we know, was two successorship, if you want to say for lack of better words, two successorships that was prominent during the time after, we know, after the Sahaba, who was the Khilafah al-Abbasiyya. Then you have the Khilafah what? You have two Khilafat, so two types of successorships, which were known in Islam. From them was what? Al-Abbasi. What was the other one, everyone? Does anyone know? Huh? I'll let you get it. During the lesson, I'll let everyone get it. I'll give you a chance. But at any rate, during the time of the Khilafah al-Abbasiyya, these people, the Shia and the Rawafid, set out in order to what? Destroy it. And they wanted their own country, or their own estate, which is called a Dawlat al-Fatimiyya, to be established. Removing what is correct, or the correct Islam, and establishing their ideologies of deitizing Ali, and also likewise so-called spreading their methodology of worshiping other than Allah. And these type of weird concepts or weird types of beliefs, they wanted to establish it and destroy the actual correct understanding of Islam, and also likewise corrupting their country in a very, very, very sneaky, sadistic way. And which we'll talk about after a minute. They also took on another form, which is tasawwuf, of so-called now manifesting what they call tasawwuf, which is zuhd. Back then, during the early times of Islam, Sufiya or tasawwuf was just known as asceticism, just as abstaining from worldly things. That's all tasawwuf or Sufiya was. And what you'll find that some of the ulama during the past, they were known for Sufiya. You'll find that, for example, Al-Imam al-Dhahab. Say it again. The Abyssinia? Yeah, the Abyssinia, the Abbasiyya, there was another one. The Fatimiyya, that's for the Shia. We'll get back to it, inshallah. Tayyib, just listen. During the time of the Khilafah, Al-Uthmaniyya, or Abbasi, astaghfirullah. Got me. The Khilafah Al-Abbasiyya. What happened was, like we said, Ya Ma'ashal Ikhwa, during their times, like we said, their plot was in order to destroy all the estate that was upon the correct ideologies of Islam. Remove it and put their own kingdom and establish their own type of what? Deviance, and corrupt it, and remove it. So they took on a form so that all of them gathered together, and they even held different sit-ins in order to say, let's now manifest something to the people in order to attract them so they could gravitate towards what we're upon. Of Shi'i, Batini, Ismaili, all these different type of deviant ideologies and wicked ways and wicked beliefs. So they hid themselves behind something which is Sufiya. The Imam al-Dhahabi during the time, this is just to let everyone know, we talked about this and discussed this last class. Sufiya back then at the times of old just meant aestheticism. What's aestheticism? Meaning just refraining from worldly things. Like not really being involved in a lot of worldly things. Just being somewhat away from what people so-called enjoy. There was a preference. Zuhid. So tasawwuf back then was what? It was just mere aestheticism. You're aesthetic, meaning that you just refrain from a lot of worldly things. That's aestheticism, or Sufiya back then. Sufiya of today is something totally different. It's an innovated practice with a lot of deviation in creed. A lot of deviant ways and beliefs which are contradictory and also opposes what is the correct belief. But Sufiya back then, in the times of old, was just mere aestheticism. That's it. So these people, the Shia, the Rafidi, Shi'i, Batini, they tried to come in this type of form of Sufiya back then in order for the people to gravitate towards what they're upon. Not realizing that they had a plot behind it. The plot was, once the people gravitated and they settled in their land, they wanted to take over. Take over and make their country and their land Shi'i, Rafidi, Batini. So that was their ulterior motive in which they hid to the people, in which that was the what? The ultimate goal behind why they came in this fake form of Sufiya back then. Upon the definition of Sufiya back then, not the definition of Sufiya now. Sufiya back then. Is it clear what I'm saying so far? Even though it's a little bit longer details, but I just gave everyone just to sum it up. So then after that, you'll find that the Shi'i, Batini, when they tried to establish their so-called government or state of Fatimi, because they put the word Fatimiyya on what they're upon, meaning that they ascribe themselves to the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ. All of that is out of what? Lies and deception, just to make the people gravitate towards what they're upon. That's it, no more, no less. So they ascribe themselves to a Fatimiyya, or Fatima. So they went out against the Abyssinian successorship of the Khilafah Abbasiyya, in which that they used to occupy the northern part of Africa and Egypt for a lot of centuries. Until, as we know, the great تفضل. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا Still raining outside too? Okay. Oh yeah. الله أكبر الله. We know during the time of those who established jihad and actually rescued the Muslims from different types of injustice and oppression, the great Imam Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, who also likewise was those who defended the Muslims from the Shia coming to take over, or they called it Dawla al-Fatimiyya. When they tried to establish it, Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi also likewise removed it. And we also know that he fought to who everyone, the Salibiyin, the people who wore the cross, the Crusaders. No, I sent the Crusaders who used to wear the crosses on their armor. Salah al-Din al-Ayyubi also drove them out too. So he drove out the Shia, the Fatimiyya, the Batinis. He drew them out because they set out in order to overthrow the correct Islamic government who was establishing what is correct and replace it with their own estate from the Shia. And he also removed the Crusaders, those who had the cross, who were trying to destroy the Muslims and actually oppress the Muslims. And not a number, a high group, but a number of Muslims were killed. But at any rate, Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, he was the one that also drove out these people, the Rawafid or the Shia, Batini, Sufi. Like we said, who tried to occupy northern parts of Africa, and they also occupied Egypt. And that's the reason why Egypt to this day are still affected by the Shia Batiniya to this day. If you go to Egypt and you see the different practices, it's extremely weird. Extremely weird things that you'll see them doing. Of grave worshiping and making supplication to other than Allah and doing practices that is just extremely weird. Of what contradicts and opposes the correct teachings what the Prophet ﷺ came with. That's because they used to occupy that territory for a long time until its influences is still left on the land to this day. That's why you'll find that in a lot of parts of Egypt, they still grave worship. They worship the dead. Why? Because of the Shia, Sufiya, Batiniya. Because of them. You'll find that these practices is still prevalent to this day, and their effect and their influences is still present. طيب, how is this now relative to what we're speaking now? Now let's go back to who's al-Badawi? Who's Badawi? Who is that? First of all, this is a story just to put in perspective the type of person who they worship, or they make dua to, or they supplicate to. This is to let you know what type of person he was. This is a story that Al-Hafiz al-Sakhawi have related in his book called Ad-Daw al-Lami'. Who's Al-Hafiz al-Sakhawi? Who's that? He's the Sheikh of Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar. Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar al-Asqalani from his mashayikh who was Al-Hafiz al-Sakhawi. But anyway, Al-Hafiz al-Sakhawi related a story about Al-Badawi. They called him a Sayyid al-Badawi. It's a famous grave that the Egyptians to this day worship. Make tawaf around and raise their hands to and committing polytheism with Allah. Who is this person? This is just to put in perspective the type of people who, to let you know how stray or the depths of darkness of what the people are committing to this day, especially in Egypt. Now listen, the story of what even Al-Hafiz al-Sakhawi, what he mentioned, that Ibn Hibban, that he visited a Sayyid al-Badawi. Al-Badawi, they call him a Sayyid al-Badawi. His name was actually Ahmed ibn Ali. We'll discuss it, just don't worry about it. He said that he came to Ibn Hibban, the great scholar of the past, Ibn Hibban al-Busti, that he came to Ahmed ibn Ali al-Badawi. And he also came with the Amir Nasr al-Din, Ibn Jinkali, meaning Ibn Hibban had came to Badawi. And also the Amir likewise visited al-Badawi on the day of Jumu'ah. Listen to this. As the people used to come to him and they used to come to them, the people used to come to him, Badawi, Afwaja, in an abundance of numbers. They used to come to him. He said, from the people used to say, Ya Sayyidi, khatiruka ma'a baqari. Oh Sayyidi, he says, your mind, he says, is with my what? Is with my baqar. It's with my cow. Meaning that you know what's taking place, or what's the state of my animal. Meaning that he has knowledge of the unseen, like Allah, and things of these nature. ومنهم من يقول زرعي إلى أن حان وقت صلاة الجمعة. To the end of it. فنزلنا معه إلى الجامع بطنطا وبطنطدا وجلسنا في انتظار الصلاة فلما فرغ الخطيب من خطبة الجمعة وضع الشيخ أحمد رأسه في توقه. This is the type of person who they so-called worship. They said when the Jumu'ah was concluded and the one who was giving the khutbah finished everything, he says we sat waiting for the salah, me, Ibn Hibban. He said when the person concluded and finished the Jumu'ah or the khutbah, he said this Sheikh Ahmed Ibn Ali al-Badawi, he put his head fi tawqihi, like in his kaaba. And he stood up and he moved and removed his awrah, exposed it. He exposed his outer in the masjid. Man is disposing his private parts in the presence of the people, and he started to urinate upon his thobe. And upon the what? Started to urinate upon his thobe. And also upon the leaves or the leaves that occupied what we know as the carpet, but the place of it was the leaves or whatever. He started urinating on it. And he continued, and they said, and his head was still inside of his collar of his thobe. And he was sitting doing that, he says, until Salat was concluded, and he didn't pray. Extremely weird, isn't it? This is who they worship. This is who they make a dua to. Shi'i, Batini, Ismaili, Fatimi, Batini, and a person that used to do these strange things. It shows how people these days don't read anything. They just follow along. They do see what the people doing, and they just go along with it. This is Ahmad ibn Ali al-Badawi. He's above that. So Ahmad Ali, just to sum it up before we pray. First of all, Ahmad ibn Ali al-Badawi, like we said, to connect the dots to everything, because a person will say, why are you talking about Rafidi, Shi'i, Batini? That's because this was his aqeedah. They said and claimed that he was Sufi, but he wasn't Sufi. That was only an act of deception in order to what? So he could carry out his plot. Where this initial deviant sect developed in Morocco, in a place called Fes. To this day, still present to this day. Fes. They will call it Fes. They call it Fes. Fes. Initially it's Fes. Fes. Fes means like an axe. Fes. But that's just a way they say it. They just say Fes. But anyway, during that time of Morocco, that was a fertile land for Shi'i, Batini, these type of wicked ideologies to be what? To develop and become strong. As we know, during that time, of course, the Emir had jealousy for the Sunnah, drove them out and exposed them and destroyed their ideologies. He says when Ahmad ibn Ali, he was what? We're talking about Ahmad. Ahmad was the son. Ali was the father. Ali was his father. Ali was Ismaili. He was still Shi'i, all of his Shi'i, Rafidi, Batini. But at any rate, Ahmad was the son. He was young at the time. When they were removed and they were exiled, they went to Mecca. And they stayed there. And they gathered all the different Shia together, and they had different conferences coming together, what they're going to do next. Since we were exiled from Morocco, we were driven out, we were removed, they all went to Mecca. Keep in mind, all of them are Shi'i, Batini, Ismaili, some of them, Fatimi, some of them. And there's another, we'll add on another detail later on, they were also called Abidi. I'll talk about that later. Abidi, all of it Shi'i, Rafidi, different sects. But at any rate, they were in Mecca, and they were also forming and having conferences of what they was going to do next. Since we were exiled, we were removed. What we're going to do. So that's when I said to everyone, then they took on the form to deceive and play deception to the people, to cover up behind what? Let's all play Sufi now. So the people can gravitate to what we're upon. So they said, let's all come together. Let's change our what? Let's change our form. And to be deceptive. And put on some type of role or mask so the people can what? Gravitate to what we're upon. But once we have the opportunity, we're going to what? Broadcast what we want and take over the land, take over the country. Still to this day, this is what the Shia and the Rawafid do. To this day. It's exactly what they do. If you read the history, their history is black. Especially what happened when the followers of Genghis Khan, when it happened with in order to destroy the Muslims, they're the ones that allowed the followers of. Now I think it was the grandfather of Genghis. It wasn't Genghis Khan, but it was the offspring from what was the followers of Genghis Khan called again? I don't know. I'm tired right now. No, what were they called again? The Mongols or the Tartars. The Rawafid or the Shia was the one that actually set up the Muslims, rendered them weak in order for the Mongols to come in to kill them. The Shia was the ones that did it. The Rawafid. What did they do? At the Khilaf at the time with the Muslims, where he had a consultant who was Shi'i. He was Shi'i. He was Rafidi. What he did was he used to he was a co-conspirator along with the Tartars or with the Mongolians. And they would secretly conspire amongst each other, and he would tell them, he says, listen, if you do such and such for me in order to remove these guys, and you give me what I want, he says, I'll go to the Emir, and I'll do something in order to weaken him and weaken the people. Then we have the proper time, come in to take over. So he went to the Emir, and he told him in his ear, as we know, they had an army, meaning the Muslims had a tremendous army. What happened? Everything in the army was strong. So what the consultant did to the Emir is, you don't need all these armies. It's too much on the society. What do you need this big army for? Tell them to put away their weapons. Tell them and also likewise, a lot of them just dismiss a lot of the army. A lot of people in the army. So he started doing it gradually. So the depletion of the army became what? Smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, making the army what? Weaker, weaker, weaker. When the time came, he went to the Tartars, told them they're ready now. The army's destroyed, done, depleted. Went to the Tartars, the Mongolians, they came in, took over. This was the history of the Shia, the Rawafid, throughout history. This was it. This is the same person who the Egyptians are worshiping. That's upon this ideology. Ahmed al-Ali al-Badawi. He was Shi'i, Batini, Rafidi, and they also call it Alawi. I'll bring that in. Abidi, all of the different sects of the Rawafid. This is who he was. Where he went initially, he also left from Mecca and he went to Iraq. His father also went to Iraq and settled there for a moment in time. Then they occupied from Iraq. He went to Egypt. And they settled in I think a couple of parts of Africa. But he initially settled in what his ultimate final stop was in Egypt. So when he died in Tanta, in the village now, which is called Tanta in Egypt, where his grave is supposedly, where they say, they say that he's buried there in that grave in which the people what? Make dua to Allah, commit shirk. This is the person who they're calling upon. They claimed that he's Sufi, but actually he was what? Shi'i Rafidi. This is who he was. Terrible, isn't it? Hijack Tasawwuf. All of that in order to what? Deceive the people. And this is who they what? To this day are calling on. That's it. Exactly. You'll find that in even the great Imam al-Dhahabi said in Siyar A'lam al-Nubala. If you read his books, he says, you'll read certain scholars, he was known for Tasawwuf. So a person will read that like, what? Scholar Tasawwuf? That's because you're not understanding the terminology. Back then, Tasawwuf was just aestheticism. That's it. No, there is no such thing as a Sufi Salafi of today. That doesn't exist. There's no, exactly, two different things. Back then, it was just an aesthetic. He just refrained from worldly things. These days and times, it's something that's a newly invented, wicked ideology. And majority of them are callers to wahdatul wujud. They are callers to the unification of Allah, being with the creation, or the creation is one with Allah, and Allah is one with the creation. That is the innovative practice of the Sufis of today, contemporary times. Where even Imam al-Albani, he mentioned it, said, Jama'at al-Tabligh, or the Tablighiyin, he says, Sufiya Asriya. They're contemporary Sufis of our time. Not the Tasawwuf of back then, of the past, meaning of this newly invented practice of disgusting ideologies and beliefs that oppose the pure teachings of Islam, of what they're doing now. And their cause ultimately is to wahdatul wujud, that Allah is unified with the creation is unified with Allah, to the point where a person is raised to a level where all the duties and obligations of Islam are removed from him. He doesn't have to pray, he doesn't fast, he doesn't do anything. Ultimately, all of them, that's their goal, is to be like Ibn Arabi al-Ta'i, like him. And that's the ultimate goal of a Sufi of these days. So Sufi of these days is not like the Sufi of during the past. Two different things. So keep that in mind, everyone. We'll continue after class, inshallah. Stop here so we can pray. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Yeah, I'm glad you reminded me.